Oh, that's good. That's really good. What a great Foo Fighter tune for this kind of reality we find ourselves in. Time to live again, time to give again. Love it. Hey, happy Mother's Day, Alessandra and Kyla. Thank you for coming on your special day and performing and giving to our community again. And happy Mother's Day to all of you moms out there. My parents divorced when I was quite young, and there's been a little bit of divorce, which some would look at as a negative. I look at it as I've got 3 different moms to wish a happy Mother's Day every month, and if I'm not on the ball, I could miss one of them. So anyways, I want to wish all you moms, even you moms that are expecting, some of you moms that had always wanted to be a mom and it didn't work out. There are so many different kinds of moms out there that have been enriching our lives. I'm thinking about my sisters and sister-in-laws who played extra moms to my kids for so many years. You were moms, and you aunts out there. Yeah, anyway, I could go on and on. This is your day, and we just want to honor you. Wish we could have you here, and we could give you a flower, and we could make a big presentation, but this will have to do. Hopefully you're in bed and someone's bringing you a nice warm cup of coffee or breakfast or who knows. Anyways, I'm Jeff and one of the pastors here at Friends Church. Just want to let you know, there have been a lot of people that have been finding us online over the last number of weeks as we've gone to this video format, a live stream format, and without us being able to kind of see you in person. We know you're out there, we've heard from you, and we would love to get to know you and your story a little bit better. In fact, we're going to hold a New to Friends, kind of a big discussion online through a Zoom group. And we would love it if you are, say, new to Friends, or you just feel new. Maybe you started attending before the pandemic hit, and you didn't know anyone, you're still trying to kind of find your way. We would love you to kind of jump in on this session. It's a safe, informal kind of gathering where we can answer some of the questions you might have about this community, show you different ways that you can get involved, tell you a little bit more about who we are, the DNA of Friends Church, why we exist, why we do things the way we do it. There's some good reasons behind it all. And anyways, we want to find a way for you to feel more a sense of belonging within this community. And when life turns to whatever normal will look like and we can introduce you to more people within our community and other things that are going on, it will be a wonderful thing. So that's happening May 24th. You can sign up online. You can go to our website, click under events and look for it that way. May 24th, a couple weeks away. You can go to our app. And by the way, we just kind of are launching a new updated app. You can find it on there too and sign up. There's a lot of information and a lot of different things that are going on that you can find on your app too. So anyways, want to wish you an amazing Sunday. Hopefully you're just sitting back and relaxing. We've got a huge, great lineup in store for you. Trevor, why don't you come?
So it's a little dance to make sure I hit my spot. Hi, Mom. I hope you're enjoying your day. And hello, my lovely wife, who's also the mother of my child. Hi, Yvonne. I hope you guys are enjoying your day as well. Happy Mother's Day. It was interesting. I asked my wife this week, I said, why do we go to Friends Church? I just thought I'd want to know. And she thought about it for a moment. She said, you know what, Trevor? It's unconventional. I said, what do you mean by that? Well, she said, as I look at, maybe other places we could be going, they kind of have lists. And, if you do these steps, this will be good for you, and this will lead you to happiness, whatever the piece is. And she said, I'm not sure that that's exactly how my life has worked, how our life has worked. I really appreciated that. I thought it was a great insight, and I do agree with that. That is why we go to Friends Church. And then she added something that was really interesting. She said, but I wish it had a list, because then it'd be easier. And she's right. It is unconventional, and that means we have to sort of figure this out for ourselves, and that's why we come, on Sunday, and why you're watching, because you're really trying to figure out how this works. So as we talk about charitable giving that's one of the things as well. There's not a, here's the amount you should give, here's exactly how it should work. That doesn't feel like Friends Church. And as you know, we've been talking about it for a few weeks. We have a black box that isn't here, and so we need to kind of replace that 500-ish a week. And it's also pretty cool. Where are we spending that money? I'm glad you asked. There's boxes here, new technology that has just come in that's allowing us to do this virtually. So we are in fact actually supporting ourselves by giving specifically to this awesome Friends Church to really keep it going, but also to keep this going even through. And that's a really important part. And for people who aren't here in Calgary, but now we're branching out, we're planning to continue this. So whenever we get back to the next new normal or whatever that looks like, we're going to help you work on your own list and really struggle and wrestle with that as you go through. And that is a really awesome reason why we keep coming to Friends, is just, it's worth doing the work. So have a great Mother's Day. Thank you for keeping this organization going. And remember, we're self-funded. It's about us together, and we'll get through this together. Vince, there's a round of applause for Vince as he comes up. You guys are all applauding at home. It's awesome. He really appreciates that. Oh, he did it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I grew up in the church, and it was actually, in a lot of ways, a really good experience. I still have close friends that I met when I was, I think 4 years old. We were chatting the other day about how long we've known each other. And I met them in the church, and I explored a lot of my life in the church in a way that maybe people who don't grow up in the church never get a chance to do. But the church I grew up with or grew up in wasn't perfect. You see, if I had to characterize what my growing up years were like, the church seemed to think that my whole spirituality was a battle against something they called the flesh. And the flesh in my tradition, which is a Protestant tradition, was anything that had anything to do with sexuality. Anything at all. So if you had a sexual thought, that was the flesh. And the goal of the spiritual journey in my tradition was to avoid the flesh at all costs. Sexual thoughts, engaging in sexuality. I know it's a lot of sexuality, but it's Protestant. We have a big issue with sexuality in Protestantism. But it was bigger than that. If you didn't work hard, if you enjoyed yourself too much, if you let yourself kind of loosen up the boundaries a little bit, all of that was the flesh. And so the whole goal growing up was to avoid this flesh. But the flesh wasn't something outside of you. It was you. And so there's this weird journey of I'm trying to run away from something that's attached to me or is part of me. And so I can't get away from it no matter how hard I try. And so we had this weird journey of, okay, there is who I am, but who I am is somehow bad because that's the flesh. And my goal of spirituality is somehow to try to transcend that, but you never could because it's always part of you. And it created this really awkward sense of spirituality that was all about denial. And I don't know if you grew up, my coach for this message grew up in the Catholic tradition. She's like, Vince, why are you talking about sex so much? It's like, because we're Protestants. That's all we really cared about. For her, she was like, sex was so bad, we didn't even talk about it. We never even used that word. And I started to think about all the different things that the people who grew up in traditional church tried to avoid. And even if you didn't grow up in the traditional church like I did, chances are you watched The Simpsons, right? Ned Flanders is the poster child of a traditional Christian person. And basically, Ned's whole journey, his spiritual journey, seems to be trying to avoid all the things that Homer loves to do. Eat donuts? No. Curse and swear? No. Run around naked? No. Have sex with his wife? No. Ned Flanders' whole existence and whole spirituality was based around denying everything that was fun in his life. When you think of traditional church, you don't think the most fun place to be. When you think of traditional church, you don't think the most beautiful expression of sexuality. When you think about church, you don't think about the group of people who just had the best palate for wine. Man, those guys knew their wines. No, none of that. In fact, the furthest expression of traditional spirituality seems to be something close to a monastic tradition. You know, monks, they wear scratchy clothes, they eat bland food, they don't do anything but sing praise and stuff like that. They never have any fun. And so here's the question I want to ask today as we start our adulting series. What is spiritual adulting? What is it when we say our spiritual journey is maturing, we're getting, growing in our spirituality? What does that mean? Does that mean we're learning to deny more and more and more? Is the goal of this journey to have Ned Flanders' life times 100? Or is there something else? Is there something open-hearted and beautiful and rich and purposeful? But it's not just based in denial. And that's where I want to go today. I want us to start the journey of looking at spirituality in a way that doesn't just see the Ned Flanders version of spirituality, where everything we want, everything we desire, everything that's fun is somehow bad and should be denied. But to do that, I need to start at the beginning. Just like children, babies, they don't come out of the womb talking full sentences. There's a development process, right? They learn how to move their bodies, they learn how to feel their emotions, they learn how to crawl and then walk and then talk, and then they stop talking because they're teenagers and they don't want to talk to you anymore. There's a development phase. What if there's a development phase within our spirituality? And to talk about the first stage, I want to share a little story about my nephew, my oldest nephew. He was the first one in our family, so of course he was fun. I was actually at the hospital when he was born. The doctor invited me into the C-section room. I said no. I always think, should I have said yes? Did I want to see my sister-in-law in that way? No, I didn't want to. Anyways, I got to see him. They took him out of the hospital. They brought him in with me into the room where I think they count their toes and fingers, and they put him under a heat lamp. I don't actually know the technical terms, but that's what it looked like, a heat lamp. But my nephew was an awesome little kid. But he had this really weird quirk. He hated wearing a shirt. Hated it. That kid, you take him home, he's 3 years old, the first thing you do, whip his shirt off. It's like running around the room, belly flapping in the wind, he's white, he's having, and you just watch this kid living life. It was amazing to watch. And there's something inside of all of us that watched him and we're just like, why can't we be that free? Until his mom takes him to the post office. Off comes the shirt. At church, off comes the shirt. Around the grocery store, he's running around throwing clothes and she's running after him. Pretty soon it's not so cute anymore, right? But here's the deal. The first stage of our spirituality, and this is defined by a researcher named Scott Peck, and his work is based on someone named James Fowler, where they said the first stage of our spirituality is focused on connection to our core desires. My nephew didn't want a shirt. Off comes the shirt. And he's running around having a blast. That's the first stage of our spirituality. Getting in touch with the things we love to do. The other day, I for the first time since this thing broke out, I went mountain biking with a buddy of mine. And it wasn't training. It wasn't staying active to stay fit. It wasn't any of those things. It was just pure fun. And we got back to the parking lot, I loaded my bike up, and I just stood up, and I just felt this, expanding in my heart, oh, I needed that. That's stage one. A connection to the core desires in each of us. It's beautiful. It truly is, right? And it expresses itself in all kinds of different ways, not just taking off your shirt, though. That could be one of them. It's the things that you love. It's eating food not because it's a perfectly balanced meal, but because the taste of that food is insanely good. It's wanting to run around in the park because you can. It's wanting to have a dance party in your house because you just feel like moving. That's the stage one part of our spiritual journey. And it'd be all good, right? I remember this story of me and my brother. So we grew up on an acreage where there was no one, for a mile. So we did whatever we want. We were basically feral children. And so we ran around, we grabbed stuff out of the garden, ate whatever we wanted, and yes, we peed wherever we wanted to. So you're in the middle of playing and you have to go to the bathroom, you just go to the bathroom right there. No big deal. Which was fine on the acreage, until my mom took us grocery shopping one day. My mom was a pretty wily person, and she's looking at these two boys, young kids, and she's like, okay, kids, she lines us up. You guys are going to play out here, but no peeing in front of the people in the grocery store. You got it? We both nod. She was pretty upset when she drove her cart past the window a little while later and looked out the window and saw two boys with their pants down and their butts hanging out peeing onto the street. She comes flying out, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "We didn't pee in front of the people in the store. We peed on the street. What is your problem?" That's stage one. I gotta pee, I'm gonna pee. Now, a friend of mine was in a Zoom call, or kind of a public Zoom meeting the other day. It was open to the public, and they're going along. This is before Zoom kind of figured out their security stuff, and suddenly someone shows up in the Zoom meeting without a shirt on. My 3-year-old nephew, cute as hell, right? 50-year-old dude rubbing his belly, not quite as cute anymore. And see, that's the thing. If we kind of think of our life as being kind of walking down this road kind of that signifies our good life, there's ditches on either side that if we fall into, it kind of kills the joy of our life. It kills the journey that we're on. And one of those ditches is a 50-year-old man without a shirt showing up at a Zoom call because he feels like it. Because we look at that and we think to ourselves, like, what's that all about? 3-year-old Vince peeing on the street? Okay. 47-year-old Vince peeing on the street? Probably going to get me arrested. You see, intuitively we understand that as we mature, some of those stage one impulses, if they're running our lives, it's going to land us in a ditch. I have a friend who I grew up with. I haven't seen him for years. He was in and out of jail for a while. The last I talked to my dad, I said, "Hey, how's he doing?" He's like, "Well, he's got 6 kids with 4 different women, and he's living with another one, and we think she's pregnant." You see, somehow in his life, he always lived stage one. If he wanted to do something, he'd do it. If he wanted something, he'd take it. And his life was jail and kind of, we call it immaturity. And when we look at a life, an adult life lived in stage one, we can see that while it has these beautiful moments of my nephew free as a bird, we can't live that way all the time. That'll kill us. It'll land us in jail. It'll take our lives out. It'll destroy relationships. It'll destroy us. And so something kind of profound happens in our spirituality where we start in this stage one where it's all about me, it's all about doing what I want, it's all about that. But the next stage of development says, wait a second, that ditch over there, that'll take me out. And so stage 2 starts to develop inside of each of us. Stage 1 is called antisocial chaotic. It's antisocial because at that time, you don't think about anyone else. Whether or not someone thought it was socially acceptable for my 3-year-old nephew to run around without a shirt, he didn't even think about that. Whether he looked good without a shirt, again, not even an issue. It was just about what he wanted to do, what you want to do. So it's chaotic. It's not tied into a social framework. The next stage, though, that sees that ditch of a 40-year-old doing that, says, okay, we need to protect ourselves from that. And this is what the traditional church has done so very well. It's seen that ditch where we just let our impulses drive everything in our lives. And it says, wait a second, that way is not the way to a good life. So it puts up a guardrail. I'd like to see the traditional church have put the guardrail right next to the ditch, but it tends to put it right over right next to you. It says anything you love, anything you want to do, anything that feels good, we're going to stop all that to avoid that ditch. Stage 2 is called formal institutional. It's where the desires of the self get put underneath the desires of a group or a strong figure. And Trevor talked a little bit this morning. His wife said, wouldn't it be easy if they just gave us the list? Stage 2 gives you the list. Should you drink? In my tradition, no. Should you play cards? No. It has answers for everything. Should you have sex before you're married? No. You don't actually need to think. You just literally go to the institution and say, what do we do? And it tells us. To avoid the ditch. And it's beautiful in that it actually does a great job of avoiding the ditch. A lot of times as adults, we see adults who haven't developed spiritually. They're just narcissists or, anarchists, for lack of a better term. And we see them in jail. We see them, and let me say this kindly, oftentimes addiction is tied into this part of our lives. Addiction says, what do I want to do right now in this moment to feel good? Not always, but sometimes. And so new addicts put themselves under the institution of a 12-step program. And it's beautiful. Should I drink? No. 12 steps says no. Should I hang out with these people? No. Should I date this person? No. It's the same idea. It's a structure that helps you avoid that stage 1 ditch. And it does it beautifully, except for one really, really important thing. It kind of makes our lives feel really crappy. Because it's all about denial. It's Ned Flanders. There's this amazing movie called Black Swan. I don't know if you've seen it, but man, I watched it the other day and I was just like blown away by it. Because see, it's a modern day parable of exactly these 2 stages of spirituality. Because Nina, the main character, a ballerina, is perfect stage 2. What she wants, what she desires, that stuff has all been shoved down so that she is the perfect ballerina. She looks perfect. Her clothes are perfect. Her hair's in one of those funny ballerina buns. I don't know why they wear those, but whatever. She's got this perfect ballerina bun. She practices like she's supposed to. She gets up on time. She eats healthy. She does everything perfect to the institution. She says the right thing. She does the right thing. She wears the right thing. She is the right thing. She has fundamentally avoided that stage 1 ditch of her life. And she's miserable. Miserable. You see, she's up for this amazing performance called Swan Lake. I don't know a whole lot about dance, but in Swan Lake, the main ballerina plays 2 different characters. One is the White Swan. And the White Swan is perfect stage 2, in my humble opinion. It's executed perfectly, the dance is done perfectly, the moves are perfect, everything is perfect. She's even wearing white, which is what we associate with stage 2. And so she's done all this work to be the perfect white swan, and she does it. When she dances the White Swan, it's just, you're blown away by what she can do. It's so perfect. But here's the problem. Swan Lake calls for the main ballerina to dance also the Black Swan. And where the White Swan is all perfection, is all rules, is all living your life perfectly down the center of that good life, the Black Swan is about sensuality and about desire and about movement that feels good. And Nina sucks at it. You see, that's the second ditch. The first ditch is the stage 1 ditch. The second ditch is on the other side of our road, where stage 2 has limited us so much that we no longer are connected to those core desires. My nephew taking his shirt off because it feels good? No, that stuff is gone. Our lives are about structure and perfection and doing what the institution tells us. But we've lost the core of us, the child of us, the movement for the sake of movement. Here's a professional dancer that can't dance because she wants to dance. She can't dance because it feels good to her. All she can do is perfect choreography. And the Black Swan says, no choreography. Man, to do it perfect means you're not doing it right. It comes from someplace deep inside of you. It comes from that stage 1 place that says, moving just feels good, and I'm going to do it. Expressing my sensuality feels good, and I'm going to do it. That's where that dance comes from. And she can't do it. She's so locked in those fences that stage 2 puts up that she's lost herself. She's lost the joy of just doing things because she wants to, taking her shirt off and running through the grocery store. That part of us dies when we're in stage 2 and we get locked in stage 2. Now, stage 2, remember, it was beautiful. It protected us from this ditch. It said, I don't want you to live a life of just debauchery where, you're going to end up in jail or alone. But in trying to protect us from that, it almost like it so controls us that we lose ourselves. We lose what we love. We lose what we desire. We lose just being who we are. And Nina's story shows it perfectly. She's totally denied the black swan part of herself, the stage 1 of her spirituality. Carl Jung says this beautifully. He says, how can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I'm to be whole. What he's saying is, stage 2 isn't the full denial of stage 1. Stage 2 helps us avoid the ditch of living that life fully, but it's integrated. It's both the white swan and the black swan. It's both running because I need to train and going for a bike ride because I just love going for a bike ride. It's doing everything perfect, schooling your kids perfect, doing everything at home perfect, and cooking popcorn for supper because that just feels fun that day. You see, as Nina denies her black swan self, her stage 1 self, things start to get bad. It's like that the part that we're denying starts to turn up the volume and saying, no, I want to be heard. Who I am, you need to hear this. And it keeps turning up the volume, and it's played out beautifully for her, but in the end, it's almost like it possesses her at one point, like it does for us. That which we deny has power. For Nina, finally, after practicing perfectly, getting up at the right time, working out the right way, eating the right things she's supposed to do, saying the right things, after this life, it's almost like finally her stage 1 self kind of bubbles up and takes over her life, and she goes out dancing at a club. Like, not choreographed dancing, just dancing because she loves to dance. Her frenemy, who's basically the perfect expression of the black swan, she ends up sleeping with her. They have a night of partying and drugs. She ends up sleeping in the next day. She's late for practice. She's hungover. She's a mess. You see, that's what Carl Jung said. Stage 1 denied turns ugly. It ends up taking over our lives. It'll hijack us. As we walk through life, it's kind of fascinating to start looking at our lives through this lens of stage 1, stage 2, doesn't it? Right now, there's a lot of stage 2 for us because we're trying to keep it together. And yet, life feels a little bit bleh. We've lost the zest. We can dance the white swan beautifully, but we've lost the thing that gives us zest in life, the things that brings joy and open-heartedness. And yet somehow we've been tricked into believing that spirituality is the denial of stage 1. Is the perfect expression of a stage 2 spirituality that's all about denial. That's the smallest guardrail so we never fall into either ditch. The question I want to ask to you today is this. In your desire for spiritual growth, what of your stage 2 spirituality is denying your stage 1? What is it of the things that really bring you joy that you've denied? Is it fun? Is it mountain biking because I love mountain biking, not because I'm training for something? Is it foods that you like? And again, we're not talking stage 1 ditch here. We're not talking like eating nothing but cake for 3 years. We're talking a moment of cake, right? Stage 2 says, hey, if we have any of that, and that was the failing of my church growing up. If you have any taste of something, you'll fall into that ditch. The truth is, that's not true. Sometimes we can have some cake and not nothing but cake. There's a way to live in the balance of our stage 1 and our stage 2 at the same time. My mom, God bless her soul, cared very much about our nutritional needs. Very much. So once in a while, every year, once or twice a year, she would go away on this retreat for women, and she would pre-cook all the meals. And they would always be delicious and nutritious. And she'd have this like handwritten description. Okay, put the oven to 350, put this in there, make this salad, blah, blah, blah. She'd have it all written out beautifully. And my dad, in a kind of a beautiful expression of stage 1, would completely ignore the beauty of her stage 2. My mom would leave, he'd throw us in the truck, we'd go to the corner store, he'd buy us all a can of Pepsi, a bag of chips, and then he'd buy frozen wieners. And that's what we'd eat for lunch. Because to him, that's what he grew up. I don't know what the frozen wieners thing was about, but try it. They're pretty good, actually. Or maybe it's just good memories from my childhood. I actually don't know. But we'd go out to like the auto wrecking, we'd go to car shows, we'd do all this stage 1 stuff that was so bloody fun. My mom's meals, although always delicious, I don't remember them. I remember a can of Pepsi, a bag of chips, and frozen wieners for lunch. You see, there's a way to express that childlikeness still. There's a way for us to find the joy in life. Now, if I ate that way all the time, I'd probably have scurvy and my teeth would fall out. Right? You can't be that way all the time. But in the same way, if I'm always eating a perfect meal with perfectly balanced nutrition that's kind of boring, sorry, Mom, kind of boring, that's not a way to live either. The message today is this: how do we live both our white swan and our black swan in balance? How do we have them both as our spirituality? Not seeing spirituality as the denial of the first stage, but as the embracing of both stages when it's appropriate. And so the question is, in your desire for growth, in your desire for your stage 2 spirituality, what of your stage 2 have you denied? Is it what you wear? When you speak? What you say? Not going along with the crowd? Not going along with how your family always does it? Is it finding connection to your power, or your sensuality, or your autonomy, or your individuality? Is it in what you do for a living? Is it in what you put your spare time into? What of your stage 1 have you denied? And you know, one of the ways to know what you've denied, when you see it in other people, you'll feel something. I grew up not dancing because dancing, of course, led to sex, and since that was a big issue for us, we put the fence right close, and dancing was on the other side of the fence. So I can't dance. I still can't dance. I've been doing YouTube videos of dancing. It's not pretty, but I've been doing my best. But when I watch someone dance their ass off, when they're just having a blast, man, I feel something from them. Primarily the movies I watch are violent action movies and dance movies. Because something about watching someone dance, express themselves that way, I can feel it inside myself. That part of me that was denied, I can feel it in them, and I can feel this attraction to it. Or you'll go the other way. Once you see someone, saying the things you want to do, wearing the things you'd love to wear, doing what you wish you could do, you'll feel this sense of trying to shut them down because it brings up that stage 1 in you, the black swan. And you're going, no, I can't have that. And you try and shut it down in those people. You'll see it with your kids or with your friends. You'll see somebody in public do something that is tied into that thing that you've denied your whole life. And suddenly you kind of just feel this vehemence towards it. Like somehow that's wrong. It needs to stop. But really what it is it's poking at something you've denied. It's poking at something that needs expression. It's that stage 1 that says, wait a second, this is who I am. This is how I want to be. And you've never let me do this. But they're doing it. Why can't we? What would your spirituality look like if you could let your stage 1 out in appropriate times? What if you let out sometimes, not all the time? That's the other ditch. Remember, we're not living that way, but there's moments when our stage 1 is completely appropriate. My nephew running around without a shirt? What about an adult at the beach? It's totally fine, right? My brother's 50. He still runs around the house without a shirt on. Guess we know where his son got it from, right? Where in your life could you let your stage 1 moment out a little bit? Move because you desire it. Eat because the taste is amazing. Speak when you normally would shut up. Let your power come out, even though right now power is a little complex in our world. Where could you let your stage 1 out, even for a moment? Can you see the excitement and the terror that comes up maybe? That feeling like, but if I let that out, I'm going to go into that ditch. No, that's just stage 2, doing what it's supposed to do. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to help you stay out of that ditch. But where could you do it? I've heard this week, I asked some people about what their stage 1 looks like. For me, again, mountain biking, I went out trials biking yesterday. I can hardly walk this morning, but man, I got a smile on my soul right now. I heard of somebody, her kids came to live with her. She's like, screw that, I'm making popcorn for supper, and we're going to eat it in bed watching TV. That's what we're going to have for supper. Can you do that every day? No. Can you do it sometimes? Yeah. Which meal do you think their kids are going to remember? The one where it was perfect, greens and blah, 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 or the time they ate popcorn in bed and watched movies for supper? I have friends who started to wear different things. A friend of mine, there's a whole story of what she denied as a child, and she started wearing different clothes now. And she's like, there's something about what I'm wearing that is like me, little me, back again. And she said it with this, almost like a tear in her eye, because she was like, it's so good to be integrated again. It's so good to welcome that part of my life, or myself back into my life. Where could you do this? Where could you express that stage 1 part of you again? Again, bounded by stage 2. We're not going to live there all the time. But sometimes, it's what makes life colorful, isn't it? Now, if you're one of those people who has lived their whole lives in stage 1, and again, we see a lot of them in our jail system, because doing whatever you want, whenever you want, usually leads to breaking a law. We see a lot of them in our 12-step programs, early into the program, where they're going, I always did whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I need structure. For those of you who are in that place, here's your stage 2 directive. Ignore what I just said. Do not let your stage 1 out. For you, you need to find the balance between stage 1, and you're on the other side. You've lived too long in this, I'm going to do whatever I want. Whereas I've lived too long going, it's all about doing everything right, the way the church told me. But for the rest of us, as we look around our lives, especially right now, especially in this time of isolation, how many of us are locked into that stage 2 form of spirituality? It doesn't look like traditional church. It looks like being a homeschool parent, getting our work done perfectly, doing everything right. The same thing that ties us into traditional spirituality and church is the same thing we're overusing now. And my fear is that our lives will look black and white. And our spiritual ancestors, Jesus, it's beautiful. You see him doing all these amazing things, all these stage 2 things, and stage 3 and stage 4. And then every once in a while he'd be like, okay, time out. I'm going to go for a walk because I can't handle y'all. I need to have some quiet time. Or I need to go just be by myself. I just need to go do something for me. See that stage 1 side? He doesn't do it all the time, but he's like, okay, there's this moment, I just want to do what I want to do and recharge me. And that's part of our spirituality too. And the dance, the profoundly difficult part is knowing when each one's appropriate. To know when we should express that stage one side of ourselves and when we're being an irresponsible parent. When I'm being a man-child and when I'm just having a good time. When I'm making a life that's beautiful and colorful and fun and like amusement park, and when I need to buckle down and train and run and do everything perfect. Knowing when to do each of those, that's part of the journey. But today, if you remember one thing from my message, here's what I want you to remember. Find some place in your life where you can let your stage one out. Where you can just be free to be who you are as you are. To do what you desire, not letting it take over your life, not letting it destroy your life, but find places where it's appropriate and safe and do it as an expression of your spirituality. What if that's part of spiritual adulting? Not going towards the monks and the nuns who deny everything, but living in a life that balances denial and just pure fun. Running around without your shirt on because that's what you feel like doing. Could it be that that's the most spiritual thing we could do? Is have both of them in our lives. The black swan and the white swan. I hope all you, and especially you mothers, I was reading just recently, biologically, mothers are designed to put the needs of everyone else before them. In some senses, it's perfectly stage two. It's why we are alive as a species, so thank you, mothers. It's beautiful. But where, mothers, specifically for you on this day, can you do something for yourself? Can you let out that inner child that wants to be alone or dance or say something or not say something or eat not perfectly or whatever it is you want to do? Give that a moment. Let it out as part of your celebration of being a mother. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, please send a note. If you want to be open and share what your stage one looks like, I shared a little bit about mine. I'd love to hear from you. My email will be on the notes. It's vince@friendschurch.ca. Stage one and stage two seem kind of easy, right? Black swan, white swan. But there's a stage three and a stage four. It gets a bit more complex. But Jeff's going to take us in this profound reaction to stage two. Just like stage two protected us from the worst of stage one, stage three is a reaction to stage two. And if you've grown up in the church or even seen that Ned Flanders type of spirituality, you don't want to miss next week. You're going to see what the next stage of spiritual adulting looks like. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe.